Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to another Freestyle Friday brought to you live by myself, James Dash, and none other than Grandmaster Péter Lékó. Peter, how are you doing all the way across the world, my friend?
Yeah, hi James, welcome everyone. Super excited to be here for another of the Freestyle Friday action.
Yeah, it's not just another Freestyle Friday action, Peter. I don't know if you caught the news very recently that at the end of this month, in fact, we will already be qualifying a top placer from both divisions into the 2027 FIDE Freestyle Chess World Championship just next year. That's pretty big news. I want to get your reaction on that first, as the games are about to get going, and we'll get in there as quickly as we can.
Yes, well, that actually means I think that we have three more events to go. Yeah,
That's
and
correct.
that's basically 30 points up for grabs. And the reason why I'm mentioning it, because we will be seeing the standings, but I believe we can already reveal as much that Alexander Bortnik is leading ahead of Pranav, but just with few points. And the big question for me was coming in today's round, today's tournament, that Nodirbek Yakuboev, who is right now playing the super tournament in Tashkent in Uzbekistan. Will he join? He's 18 points behind Bortik, and yes, he's joining. He's playing. So that actually shows that how important the players are taking it.
Asking the right questions and some big questions to be answered in the coming days, coming weeks. As you mentioned, 3 events between now and qualifying one of those players from each of the divisions. Let's get through some of the business real quick before we get into the games themselves. First, let's start with the prize pool. Let's take a look at what's for grabs here today on this fine Friday. It's $1,000 in total, with $400 going to first place. A second and third going to grab $250 and $150 respectively. So a nice chunk of change there. But as well as that, comes the points for the overall standings. Now let's take a look at the tournament and time format. As everybody knows, we're playing freestyle chess here, but it's fast freestyle chess. We're playing 3-2 blitz chess here today. As you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, we got events running all year long with the top 10 finishers in each event points. Those are very all-important points towards qualifying towards that world championship just next year, with every single one being $1,000 prize pool. And it's an 11-round Swiss event, so it's very much a grind of an event, while the players are going to have to play quickly overall. From here, let's go to that point distribution, though, to see what they're fighting for when it comes to the overall. Again, $1,000 is up for grabs today, but one overall player qualifies for the 2027 FIDE Freestyle Chess World Championship after points are counted from all of these Freestyle Friday Championship leaderboards. And so that is what our eyes are going to be set on here today and in the coming weeks. And from there, we got to take a look at the current leaderboards. Peter, we already had you give us a small taste of what to expect. But as you see kind of more of these names pop up on your screens, who do you think are those real contenders? Is it just a two-person race between Pranav and Alexander for this first spot in 3 weeks' time?
I think today's tournament is super important because if there won't be any earth-shattering kind of development, then it really looks like it will be between these two gentlemen. But if suddenly Yakuboev takes the event today and the top two guys are actually missing out on grabbing quite some important points, then we can head to the final two events with some incredible tension. Yeah, and this also gives me the chance to maybe jump into one of the actions, Nodirbek Yakuboev, for example. Maybe let's start with his game. What's he up to?
I like it. Let's go there. He's up against Alexander, 2300 rated. We're already well progressed into this game, though, here. So without seeing the starting position here, Peter, and we jump in, the eval bar likes the position for white, but what's your assessment already as we see a number of pieces have left the board?
Yes, well, that it's very complex because black has sacrificed an exchange. Look at that marvelous knight on e4 and the queen on e5 protected that knight with the pawn on d5. White's king is kind of unsafe. He has computer suggesting that white is clearly better, but in a practical game with little time on the clock, black has very good practical chances.
That's a bit of a provocative move there, and the engine will kind of concur, throwing a small question mark with the h-pawn push there. Somewhat aggressive.
Yes, and it just gives me the feeling that that's not the flank white would love to play or white needs to play, because I would really love to somehow cement my position. The long diagonal with some queen e3, queen d4, making sure that I'm never going to get any checkmate along the long diagonal. Luckily for the moment, of course, the knight on c2 is covering that very important square, but black has some activity like coming with the rook to g3, so white should try to get that queen to d4 and cement.
Yeah, the pawn move in particular feels odd because we gave control of that G file over to black. Now we're going to look to contest it, maybe offer the trade on our terms. But even still, now Noterbeck just going to go ahead and sidestep that threat, keep his rook on the board.
Yes, and one of the things that clearly white is not intending to play the move queen e3 because he was afraid that his pawn on f5 is hanging. But I believe that forget about the pawn, getting stability, controlling, coordinating your forces is absolutely key. Because look at this, now Noterbeck is trying to activate that knight. Yeah, now the knight goes to f6, protects the d5 pawn. Okay, white blockaded. However, now black's queen is super strong. Maybe just a move like king b8, sidestep, followed by a6. You know, black has all the time in the world because white is unable to really do something to the position.
And you can kind of see the difficulty that white is having in terms of plotting a path forward, right? Wanting to make progress, but now feels like running into a bit of a brick wall that is black's position in that beautifully centralized queen that you're highlighting there, with already a possible sight line pinning the knight onto the king.
Yes, and let's not forget, this is a blitz game. This is not a classical game where you feel like, you know, you will get a chance to calculate. Yeah, you have to rely on your feelings. And very often in positions like this, it's the question with which side it is easier to play. For example, now knight d7, knight b6, knight c4. That's again something that catches your attention that, yes, I can go for it. And how is white going to defend the position?
Well, making progress is Noterbeck Yakoboyev at this point, a nearly one position as he'll snap off that knight, center of the board on d4.
Yeah, that's it. It's basically over. And this is what I was talking about. Yeah, that in a practical game with little time on the clock, who has the initiative, who has the momentum going, it's the key element.
Well, that was quite the turnaround there for Noterbeck Yakoboyev with the fork here, or rather the check on the king. The resignation will come through. Alexander is going to go ahead and hang it up there against Yakoboyev, one of your picks, as you mentioned, top two right now in the current standings. And what a start for him, 1-0. But we still got 10 more games to go. So we should take a look at the rest of the field and find out where we want to go next. Perhaps we go to Pranov, who has not yet closed out his game, but looks like he's about to against Victor.
Yeah, he's up a pawn. Okay, rook end games are always tricky because there are good drawing chances, but I believe now with rook e4, white is in time to protect the h4 pawn, make sure that if black attacks the pawn like rook h2, then we have rook f4, and then finally we'll be picking up one of these pawns, and then it should be elementary win. Yeah, that's exactly being played. So Pranav will start with a win as well. Bortnik has won his game. Sina Movahed, we haven't talked about the young Iranian prodigy who has also joined us. And he's also still hoping for something, probably not in this June period, but we will be talking about that. There will be one more spot later at the end of the year up for grabs.
That's a very good point, right? We're obviously going to have most of our sights set on the current or the first person, to qualify through here at the end of 3 weeks, but there will still be another spot up for grabs on the second half of the year. And so we'll be looking for players to cement themselves as the person to beat, or maybe people to keep our eyes on as we move through the year. But Pranav just looking to put the finishing touches on this one.
Personally, I'm also very happy to see Dimitri Andrekin joining the show, and also Prishong. Yeah, because the more strong players are joining, the better for us, better for everyone. And yes, Prav has won his game. So all the stars started with a win, but actually Dimitri Andrekin only made a draw against Amir Gafurian. That's kind of the first sensation of the tournament.
There you go. So maybe, yeah, the first of the smallest of deviations from expectation. We do expect a number of these early rounds, right, to go the way of the higher rated players or the favorites. It is kind of the nature of a Swiss system. There's a bit of a luck of the draw early on, but then obviously you're going to start getting paired against tougher and tougher, more difficult opponents, those who match your record as we move through the rounds. So kind of a smooth start for a lot of our front runners. But that gives us maybe a quick moment here, Peter, to continue our conversation around that leaderboard, where we have a couple players, one at 53 points, one at 49 points, and then just a few players in that 30-point range. You mentioned with only 3 weeks ahead of us, that means anybody who's more than 30 points behind the leaders cannot get that top spot, right? It would be impossible, even if they were to get first each time and the other person picked up 0 points each time. And so those top 5 players that you're looking at right now on your screen, those are the names that you need to be concerned with in terms of who will get the first qualification to the 2027 FIDE Freestyle Chess World Championship coming out of the Freestyle Fridays. Obviously, the biggest of focus is going to be on the top 2, maybe top 3 with Noterbeck here today, if he can put up a big showing, still within striking distance, 18 points behind the current leader.
Yes, absolutely. And I also just looked around. There is also Sasha Grishchuk playing today. We have seen also Faustino Oro, who is 6th on the leaderboard. He's also fighting because, as we mentioned, there is one spot right now, right here in June. June 26th, we will know the first qualifier, but there will be another person qualifying at the end of the year, and you already have to start collecting the points as much as you can in order to have your chance of getting that coveted spot. So the tournament is heating up.
Exactly. And not just the points, but also the practice, right? I think that's one thing that we kind of keep coming back to is, how different the nature of this event, Freestyle Friday, is than, say, the circuit that you and I have had the pleasure of commentating, live and in person, just from a time control perspective. As we hop into our second game of the day, this one we're going to catch right from the beginning. So as we can see, we've got cornered bishops in all 4 corners, a very dangerous setup, I think, that we have found many times in Freestyle Friday. Who's going to find a way to leverage those cornered bishops and those long diagonals as early as possible? And so far, we have largely symmetry. That symmetry will be found here with this most recent pawn push by Black.
Yes, basically, there is always the big question in freestyle chess. Yeah, what do you do with white? And also, what do you do with black? Yeah, that do you try to use your advantage in the opening with the white pieces? But this actually might require time. And in the 3+2 time control, you don't really have this luxury. So very often, I think the players feel like, okay, let me just get a normal position. Even if it's symmetrical, then we take it from there. Because it's just too risky to fall behind on the clock. There are probably completely different approaches. Some players probably prefer that, wait a second, let me a little bit spend some time at the beginning in order to try to create the chaos why we love freestyle chess so much. At the moment, right here at this very game, it's a very peaceful one. Clearly, white intends to play fast. And probably knowing that Planic is the big favorite, white does not even mind the draw. Yeah, so after d5 now trading pieces, there is also the possibility of taking on f6 and then taking on d5, getting into some opposite colored bishop position. There is also maybe this intermediate move of, yes, and white plays bishop e5. Exactly, it's a very awkward kind of move. Yeah, because what do we do? You can't really play queen b7 because then already white can take and then capture on d5, and the bishop is not anymore controlling the d5 candidate. You have to go knight c7. Oh la la, this is then such a horrible pin, and white gets the initiative.
Now, what a beautiful little find here, then, by white to make things difficult here for Pranav. He is going to retreat with the knight to protect that pawn, as well as the queen itself, obviously disconnecting the bishop from the sightline to the queen.
And now, oh, cd, I'm not liking it. I really wanted to go with d4, try to get because by trading the dark square bishops, actually black will get rid of this awkward pin, and that knight will be able to get back to e6. This will be immediately a kind of classical type of position. The big question, do you play f6 or do you remove the king to g8? It's a typical kind of question in this type of positions. If that knight would be on c6, then clearly you play f6. But with the knight on c7, maybe there are some tactical possibilities. But yeah, black nevertheless decides for f6. White goes for d4, opening up the position.
Yeah, it feels a bit odd because in a sense, it felt like White was playing for just a moment of tempo, right, with the check on the king. But now you've also shut your own queen out of the game, at least for a period of time. She'll find her way to the center of the board after a flurry of trades. But like you said, now the knight has found its way back, out onto the board. Saved the black queen. We've liquidated pieces. Now I'm going to favor the stronger player, by 400, 300, rating points.
Yes, and there is also this saying that queen and knight combo is stronger than the queen and bishop. Yeah, so objectively, if we count the material, then of course queen is 9 and the knight is 3 and the bishop is 3. Yeah, so everything is equal. But very often the queen and knight combo can start jumping, and especially in blitz game, start jumping. For example, knight to c5. You put the other pawn to you push the pawn from a7 to a5. Everything is protected. Who knows? Somewhere the knight will jump. Eventually, in the long run, imagine we trade queens and that black knight lands on c3 and targets those weak pawns on the queen side. Yeah, there are all kinds of scenarios that black can hope for. Of course, it's dream scenarios. Objectively, the position is draw, but with little time on the clock, being able to play fast, that might give you the practical edge.
In a drawish position, help me understand that concept then, that knight and queen is stronger than bishop and queen, because I think a lot of people would look at endgame scenarios and they say, well, I'm told typically a knight gets worse the further we go into the game because of how it's limited movement and how it can struggle to move from one side of the board to the other as compared to a bishop, which can really switch up it's the sides of the board and the pressure that it's applying. Is it because the bishop and the queen can only interact on one color complex, and so in order to work together, they only have 50% of the squares on the board, whereas technically the knight and the queen, while it might take longer, they can touch any square on the board?
Well, it also depends on the pawn structure. Yeah, so because it's a semi-closed kind of position, that's why I feel like with the queen and knight combo, black was a little bit more flexible. However, white was very precisely using the chance that he could pin that queen on d6. So black played the move knight before there was nothing else. White includes this bishop check very nicely, kicking that king backwards. And now suddenly you can maybe even get active because you have all kinds of check ideas all of a sudden, but also trading on d6 makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so the queens are off the board. We're into a minor piece endgame here. The equivalence when it comes to the pawns. However, a slight difference in the pawn structure with one isolated pawn here for black. However, it sits on a black square, so no option for the white bishop to target it.
Yeah, I'm expecting a draw here because white has 35 seconds. The only one who can play for a win is actually white, but black is very solid. It's kind of a blockade. White has only one idea, trying to get with the king to the queen side, and potentially if that king can... Oops, we might be seeing a repetition, or at least it's an invitation for repetition, but black tries to shuffle around with the knight. Okay, king e2. We just come closer. Kick that knight.
Pawn trades. Still a drawish position, but you can see Pranavi's poking and prodding, looking for perhaps an endgame slip-up, something he can capitalize on to turn this draw into a win.
Yeah, it's kind of very funny that normally in any game where, two 2700 plus players would be playing, black would be very happy with the draw. I mean, of course, it's a drawish position, but black can stop the clock any moment, would just shake the hands that thank you very much. And white would be one, wait a second, maybe I can do something. But here, because of the clock situation and because he's up 300 rating points, he's trying to play for a win in a position where actually he has no right to play for a win. Nah.
Yeah, he's still searching for it. You can see Talab, though, he's holding strong. And this would be an impressive performance for him to put up a draw against Pranav, one of our top 5 in the current overall standings. Yeah,
in fact, second place there. He's just 4 points behind, I believe 4 points behind of Bortnik.
Yeah, so this would be big for Talab Rami here, trying to hold strong against his Indian opponent. Some more shuffling of the minor pieces.
Yeah, well, a knight before will be played, probably trying to hit the bishop, but no, you can't. You can't play this for a win with black. But okay,
Just
clock is
thinking about
ticking down,
rerouting the
16 seconds.
yeah. I mean, you're out of options here when it comes to white. It's basically just shuffling that bishop back and forth. You can't target a single one of your opponent's pawns due to the color complex. Yeah, the king's going to go on the run to the right-hand side of the board, but it feels like we can just shut him out with our own king at some point.
Yeah, if we want, but also if black is going with that king too far, suddenly I'm very tempted to try to get my king active, yeah, because the pawn on b6 is very vulnerable. So black always has, you see the evil part,
Yeah?
disliking h6 because this is already going too far, but white is just insisting on making a draw.
Yeah, interesting. It was giving a 3-point advantage in that moment. It wanted e5,
Yes,
actually,
yes.
off of that king move.
And wow, now actually e5 was winning because of bishop f5 trick. But this is when the evil part tells you, yeah, if you have 10 seconds on the clock, yeah, I'm not even looking for such tactics.
Exactly. Yeah, the difficulty of having to play on fast time controls and the benefit of having a computer engine at our disposal. But
Of
either
course.
way, the game has now progressed. I'm a little bit surprised to see that we're still in this one.
Well, I told you that Prav should have never tried to play emotionally for a win in this position. And look at this. Now the king is coming. King
Oh,
d4, king c4. He is losing it.
this could be extremely dangerous. And he's losing on time as well. It's going to make his situation even more difficult to navigate. Again, 3+2. So we would rarely expect somebody to flag, but with 3 seconds on the clock here, Pranav has to continue to make moves. We do see the minor pieces off the board, but now it's an extra pawn here in favor of white.
Yeah, white just wins. King c4 and then you queen with check. I mean, you queen with check, yes. That's it.
Wow. Can you
Wow.
believe it here?
Yes.
Second game of the day. And look at the emotion on Talab Rami there as he gets the win, the fist pump from the young man.
Of course, but I have seen it coming because I told you that black has no right to play for a win in a position where actually he would be very happy to make a draw. It just based on the fact that his opponent is lower rated, has little time on the clock, but it was so safe for white. It was not a position that you could really put pressure on the opponent with the clock and hope that he will make a mistake.
And honestly, what nerves, to hold your nerves rather there for Talab, because you're fighting in the David position of the David and Goliath story, right? Looking at somebody who is 300, 400 points, rating, above you, and still you choose to fight. Still you have the composure in that low time in the end game situation. To capitalize on your opponent's mistake and take it to a win. What could have been a draw there for Pranav turns into a loss, a bit of a disastrous start for one of our overall leaders. As we take a look at the board, though, still plenty of people in contention at 2-0, and still with 9 games to go. I wouldn't say that Pranav is completely out of it, but very early on here on a Friday, he's got to turn it on now, Peter, if he wants to keep himself in the running.
Yes, actually, it's not a disaster. Of course, he will be kicking himself because he did the trouble to himself. That's the biggest problem. And what I feel like he showed some nerves because it showed like he was trying to win this position, which was unwinnable. Actually, you could only lose it if you are pushing. So why do you push? And it somehow signaled to me that it was a very emotional decision, that he knows that he needs to win the event because Bortnik is leading with 4 points. But in my mind, in order to get the maximum result, you have to focus on the game. Forget about the overall standing because you are playing 3+2. You just cannot afford yourself to be carried away by thoughts like, what do you need? You need good moves. You need to make
Yeah.
one move at a time, win the game. If it's a draw, then make a draw and continue playing normal chess. because if you put too much pressure on yourself, then we have already seen the result.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And now he might be feeling even more pressure, right? If he was feeling the pressure then, and he's thinking about the standings then, that's where I concern myself with. If he looks at the updated current leaderboards and says, "Ooh, I dropped a game. I'm looking at all the other people who are next to me in the standings, haven't taken, an extra win." We take another look at our leaderboard here. You can see the likes of Alexander Bortnik at 2-0. We got Marco Materia up there as well. We got Faustino Oro. We got Noterbek Yakuboyev that we talked about earlier. We got Sinna, one of the names that you called out, maybe not in contention for the first qualification spot just due to his current overall standings, but a name that we're going to have to keep or rather at the front of our minds as we move into the latter half of the year. We'll continue to track him throughout today's tournament as well. You got Alexander Grishuk down there in the 10th place spot. His share of a 2-0 start to the day. So fantastic start to a number of our players. Pretty soon, we'll start to see those players run into each other, right? And I think that's where things really get interesting in the Swiss system is once you get to that 4th and 5th round and you start to see some of the top end guys start to run into each other a little bit more.
Yes, exactly. And I think that in this regard, it's very important to see that there are so many strong players in the mix. This is actually good news for Pranav because he knows that nobody will be able to run away with the tournament. The field is just way too strong. And already in the 3rd round, Cristobal Henriquez, who is a 2600 grandmaster from Chile, is playing against Bortnik. Mitraha Guha plays against Yakuboev, Konrad Holt against Sina Movahed. You see that already in the 3rd, and Edgar Mamedov against Renato Terry. Lot of great fights.
Yeah, there's fights all over the place. Yeah, we got Sina versus Conrad Holt. What a showing we've had today, just in terms of the players who have shown up on Friday to compete in this event. It's always a bit of a coin toss. We show up to work today not necessarily knowing who all is actually going to be on the roster of competition, as compared to other events we work where we know these are the 10 competitors for this many days and these are the matchups. Here, it's a little bit of a wild card for us, just like it is for the players. Less pressure on us, though, I'm sure.
Definitely. Yeah, we can enjoy the show and the players are sweating because really in a 3 minutes time control game, facing these problems like this position, for example, White has some trouble with the f2 pawn, Black had trouble with the pawn on f7. That's why the knights are reaching out to h6 and to h3. What a crazy kind of position. It's not the usual classical e4, e5, slow Italian kind of game. Just looking at the king on d1 and d8, and the queens on h1 and h8 tells you the story that this is completely out of control.
Yeah, knights on the rim are quite normally dim, but this is an interesting kind of example of how freestyle chess at times can take what seem, like core chess principles and maybe throw them out the window. And it's all relative to the starting position, and what the players have to work with. You talk about maybe these players would be sweating. I'm looking at the screens right now. Alexander Bortnik, he looks like he's jamming to some music or something. He looks comfy, cozy.
Yes, I think that's the point, that when you are such an online blitz specialist like Bortnik, then you are already used to any kind of scenario. Then he feels like, okay, give me any freestyle position, I'm fine with it, but for any ordinary person who is not used to it, would be looking at this position and would be thinking, wait a second, if suddenly after f4, eventually that potentially this bishop from c8 lands on g4, gives a check, what do we do with this king? Yes, that's the answer. White goes f4, f5, but knight g4 jumping. Black is getting ready to break up with g6. Actually, knight g4's idea is not to deliver the knight f2 check because the knight is covering it. It's much more, I think, that with g6, breaking the construction is the key.
Yeah, we do have that connect 4 on the pawn chain there for White. So David Howe is now rooting in favor of the White player in this position. The castle comes through, a small edge given to Black here by the computer's evaluation. Alexander Bortnik, he's going to go for that h-pawn push, giving his queen an option to get into the game by just sliding up onto that 6th rank there.
Yes, and it's kind of a very interesting configuration that this knight on g4 is untouchable. And the knight on g4 actually makes it impossible for White to play queen f1 because then the pawn on h2 might be hanging. And after knight d5, there was also this direct possibility for black to expand on the queen side with b5, a5,
Now, I
creating
don't know
a
about
lot of
you, but
pressure from every angle.
that's what I was about to say. I'm already starting to feel like it's tough to breathe in White's position with how much progress Alexander's made in terms of grabbing space on the board and just kind of constricting. You see those bishops tucking themselves down onto the second rank. Sure, they're well positioned to defend the king, but their options for movement are getting completely cut off.
Yes, and one of this very paradox moment of all this is that just before this queen g8 move, black has not yet moved his king and the queen was still stuck on h8 and the computer still believed that white was outplayed. And the reason why Botnik played the move queen g8 exactly was this tactical shot, bishop takes f5. Now after e takes f5, queen takes d5, wins the pawn. So white would like to hit something on c7, but then be careful, potentially somewhere some queen a2 might come and target white's king.
Yeah, very instructive though there. Snapping off the pawn to remove the defender. Now the queen can centralize by picking up another piece. So a pawn advantage here for Alexander Bortnik and an even bigger computer evaluation advantage, nearly 3 points now by just that sequence. Great little find, tactical find.
Yes, now the big question is, and he goes for it. Yeah, bishop takes it. It was very tempting because after b takes a3, queen a2, it just feels like, wait a second, sir, it should be checkmate because this king on c1 is so tied to the position. Yeah, so white goes king b1. Now the big question, do you keep on insisting taking on b2? Because this case after king b2, a3 check, at least I can hide my king on a1. That feels safer. Whether it's good or bad, it's a different story, but it's safer than before.
Well, that's the question he's looking to answer now, and there's the answer to your question.
And what is it that after a3 check, king a1, there is knight b4 or knight takes d4 tactics? Because after cd, queen d4, there will be checkmate. So that's actually huge. Then a3 check was probably winning on the spot. b4 also looks good.
Yeah, a3 check, definitely the best move in the position, but there were many good moves in the position, and he finds one of them.
Yes, but okay, you have to finish it off because suddenly white's queen is ready to join the game. Queen f3, finally it's activated.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, black just captured too many pawns. Also, the g4 knight is ready to jump to e3 to e5, joining the party.
Look at Alexander. Was he about to have a heart attack? Does he feel like he just escaped something? There we go. Rook's off the board with a check. So the king finally moves from one position in the center of the board to another position in the center of the board. We got Cristobal trying to keep his game alive by throwing checks at the opposing king. But it feels like this is kind of an attack that will fizzle out quite quickly. There we see the retreating knight move to block in favor of the king.
Yes, and now a3, you just open up the a file and it's automatic checkmate. I'm expecting resignation because there is just no way to continue.
Yep. Letting the time tick down is Cristobal. You can see a bit of disappointment, perhaps, in the way that this game has ultimately played out. He is going to play out a few more moves, but the result is guaranteed at this point. We have mate and 6 on the board, and Bortnik is not the kind of guy who wouldn't be able to find it. So there is the resignation, and the head bops continue. He danced into this game. He'll dance his way out of it. A 3-0 start here for Alexander Bortnik. This is one of the guys that we started talking about last month in our debut Freestyle Friday broadcast between the two of us. It's good to see him back again this week and continuing to perform at a top level, a guy that has to be considered as a contender. We can see a couple other people have also slotted in behind him at 3-0 as we jump on over to Sinamovahead versus Conrad Holt. These two players as well, both at 2 points apiece, locked in battle here with Queen, Rook, minor piece each, but one more pawn in favor of Sina here. Two more, actually.
Maybe even two more,
but doubled.
But
Yes,
the point is that also white's king is in a lot of trouble. Yeah, queen e2 check, it's game over because the rook is lost. total domination from black. And Sinamova had also moves up to 3 out of
Wow.
3.
And that's a
It's
big
gonna
win
be
because these are already
huge.
some heavy hitter matchups. These are big grandmaster matchups already to be coming away with full point victories. Sinamova joins that group of 7 players now at 3-0, with maybe a few more to find their way into that pack as we jump over to Faustino Oro versus Talab Rami. We saw Talab play just a bit ago. Now we're getting our first look at Faustino here today on June 12th.
Yes, it's always nice to see Faustino in action, but at the moment it seems like Taleb is playing the tournament of his life. Yeah, he won that game against Pranav, and he's super solid. There's just nothing really happening in the position. It should be draw, but be careful. There are always some kind of tricks. Queen c4, knight c6, or queen d7, trying to deliver checkmate. Yeah, king 8, and now black is controlling the c8 square. That's why it was very important to get the knight back to d6.
So now the repetition is expected. No, the king is going to make his way out onto the board.
Yeah, but there's just nothing to...
Ooh.
No, don't do this. C5.
Uh-oh.
C5 check.
No!
Winning the queen.
Oh, no.
Oh.
It slips in that moment for Faustino. And Talab gets a win out of what could have been a draw. You talk about him playing the tournament of his life. He might have just gotten the gift of his life there in that moment to go with a full decisive victory.
Yes, and here we see that sometimes being the underdog helps you, yeah, because the only reason why Faustino was playing for a win in this position was that he knew that he is the favorite, yeah, and Talab, after people, you know, when I saw this position, the first thing that came to my mind was that, wait a second, Faustino probably did not see what happened in the previous game between Talab and Pranav, because if he would have known how Taleb has beaten Pranav, then he would have taken the draw here. Because just don't mess with this guy. He's a great player, and he's also very good in controlling his clock. He is not the one who is getting super nervous with 5-6 seconds on the clock. He relies on this 2 seconds increment and plays good chess.
I love the point you made, though, about the fact that can be one of the biggest assets for an underrated player, or for the underdog player in a matchup, right? Is that you can use your opponent's supposed disrespect, I'll put it in air quotes, in the way that they play against them, right? Their expectation is that they will beat you. They might play a little bit looser, a little bit more disrespectful as a result. And that is something that you can ultimately use to your advantage. Talab has done so phenomenally here today. He now starts the day at 3-0. He still has 8 games ahead of him, so we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but perhaps he can use that momentum to close out the day in brilliant fashion as we hop over to one other game here to close out our 3rd round of the day.
Yeah, I think this is the last game that is still in progress. And, this is a very interesting position because, yeah, they are having 50 seconds against 40 seconds. It does not matter because this is a fortress. Yeah, this is the type of position that, despite you are queen versus rook, black will just sit on these squares. Black will not go pawn hunting. Don't go pawn hunting. You just sit on these 3 squares, rook e5, rook c5, rook a5, and there's just no way for the white king to cross any lines. And the only pawn that is weak on c7 is beautifully guarded by the king and the rook. This is a perfect fortress.
Yeah. So stable play here out of Samdan. Our player with the black pieces, you can see our player with the white pieces, he's wrestling for some kind of control, looking to infiltrate the queen, diving in, looking for more checks here on the white complex. But like you say, I'm a bit surprised to see the pawn push there, of all things.
Okay, the point was that white knew that he cannot make any progress anyway, so let me try. Maybe black removes something. Yeah, it's like psychological sacrifice, because the estimation of the position does not change, and black still has these 3 squares: rook e5, rook c5, rook a5. You just shuffle.
Well, it looks like as we have the accuracies flying up onto the screens, it was probably a pretty stable game between both of these players. While we did end up with inequality in terms of the material on the board. We'll end up with equality in the score lines. A draw offered and accepted by both of these players through repetition. What we expected as we arrived at the board, and that will bring us to the end of our third round here on Freestyle Friday, June 12th. Again, 3 weeks between now and qualifying one of our players to the 2027 FIDE Freestyle World Championship. And so it's going to be very likely one of the players that's on your screen right now. These 3-0 players who continue to fight for progression through our 11-game Swiss format that we have here today. Marco Materia still up there alongside players like Ethan Sheehan. We got Tong as well. And right into it we go into the fourth round. No time to breathe for us, no time to breathe for the players. We've got Alexander Bortnik and Marco Materia, two 3-0 heavyweights now about to go at it.
Yes, and I think already last time we have covered quite a lot of Marco Materia games because he has played a very good event and very nice to see him in action, the young Frenchman. I'm always getting tricked by his name, yeah, automatically. But by now, I have already learned. I knew already that he's a very strong player, but I'm getting fooled with his name. Yes, he's a Frenchman playing against Bortnik. I also see some amazing other pairings like Sina Movahead against Alexei Sarana. Sarana is also here. We haven't talked about him yet. Nodirbek Yakuboev against Tong Xiao. Tong Xiao is one of the young Chinese hopes. I think he just finished shared first in the Asian Championship, finished a couple of days ago. So he is, I think, now crossing to the 2600 rating level. So someone also for the longer term to keep an eye on. And so much action everywhere. Samuel Tersahakian, David Paravian, just to name a few more players that are here with us today.
Yeah, we really are spoiled here today. And I'm glad to see more and more of these top-level players joining these Freestyle Friday events, getting into the mix, getting their hands dirty, looking to challenge each other, looking to challenge themselves as well in a format that is probably still unfamiliar to a lot of these players in terms of the actual practice that they have, and, you know, playing in kind of a more competition-type setting. But either way, as we kind of take stock of the position here so far, what do you make of it? There's slight dissymmetry on the board overall, while there is equality in the material.
Yeah, but actually I really like black. Yeah, for example, if black would be able to play knight c4, clearly white has bishop h6. But does he? Then there are some tactics with knight x-bit. It's a typical Grunfeld kind of position. I was playing it in my childhood, that there are all these counter strikes. Be careful, Bortnik might be in for some trouble. Bishop h6 played. Now let's wait, because of course black can also just play bishop g7 and has a normal nice position, but there's also this tactical shot of knight bit. Okay, first he trades the queens.
But now I can
white...
I can capture with my knight though and protect the pawn, yeah.
Yeah, but that is kind of also a very sad move. It wasn't the plan that Bortnik had in mind when he went for this e4 break. Yeah, he wanted to get the initiative. And if you are forced to take, and he captured, of course, with the knight on d1, now bishop g7, black is tiny, a little bit better. Black is putting some pressure, maybe just b5, protect that knight on c4, get that look into the game. And the bishop on h1 is still very far from action.
Yeah, I definitely don't like that I had to bring my knight back to the first rank, and the fact that it's disconnected my own rooks, you know, from each other. But at the very least, we've avoided giving up that pawn in the long run.
Exactly. It was a sad necessity. Yeah, it was not a desired move, but there was it was an obligatory one. And you mentioned very nicely. I really liked how you described that there are some great players now in the mix, but the big question: how much experience they have in freestyle blitz? And for example, coming back to the previous Bortnik game against Henriquez Cristobal, I felt like Cristobal is still a newcomer. Yeah, he did not sense the danger in the very early stages of the game. He played natural kind of chess. He was the first to castle. It looked like he's playing according to classical principles of chess. What can happen to me? And the game gave the answer that, you know, in freestyle chess, playing according to the classical principles, sometimes it's a good idea, but you have to be very...
Yeah, I tell you this much. I'm quite excited for the period of time, when enough history has passed in freestyle chess that we start getting the freestyle chess books and we start to understand what are the differences between the skill sets, of a classical chess player and a freestyle chess player. What are the, kind of things that you need to, like, the skill sets that you would want to over index in and favor more when it comes to freestyle chess? What are the the patterns and themes that persist between the two, or maybe are less relevant from one format to the other? Time will tell when it comes to that kind of stuff, but as it stands, the players with the most experience typically we see performing the best because they're just more comfortable in the unknown right now.
Yes, and also we mentioned this that Marco has pretty much experience already. This I noticed last time when we covered his games. Yeah, he was fast, he was confident, he was up to any kind of challenge. And I also covered his games in the Doha World Rapid and Blitz Championship, and I remember that already there he made a name for himself. So I think he's also an extraordinary talent. That his rating is probably still way lower than his potential, because I think he will be 2600 in 1 year for sure.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I could only dream of such a rating. Well, here we go. Look at
Well, you
this.
should not, you should not be dreaming. You have to do something for it. Yeah, the
That's a
rating
good point. That
is
is a
not
good.
coming. Rating is not coming just like this. You are a professional. You are an incredible announcer. You are a fantastic commentator. That's where you put your energy. That's where you put the effort. That's why you are so good at it. And you know exactly that it does not come just like this. Yeah, you had to put a lot of efforts into, and that's also how with chess players it goes.
It's a lesson for chess. It's a lesson for life. Nothing comes free. At the very least, it takes an investment of time. And you're right. I've put my time into certain skill sets. They've treated me quite well throughout my lifetime. Chess was not one of those in terms of the play, perhaps on the commentary level. And who knows? I'll get better by watching top players like this and being able to sit alongside the greats like yourself in the commentary booth. Either way, though, look at this. Marco
Yeah,
Materia, he's really fighting tooth and nail right now. A bit of a miss here by the engine in terms of bringing it to a conclusion. But Bortnik's not in a comfortable spot.
yeah, and bishop h3, that's the problem. Now rook d1 checkmate is a big threat. How do you deal with it? If you move the rook, one of the pawns are hanging, yeah, f4 or b2, and Bortnik in a lot of trouble. Bishop e6, b3.
He's going to try and kick
Okay,
this knight
that's good
away.
news. Yeah, actually, white got very lucky because the knight d2 is not possible due to rook d3. Pin. That was the problem. And now, okay, white has some chances of coordinating, but the b3 pawn is super weak. So some check rook b2.
Yeah, king's
Knight
back down
c2,
into the
knight
first rank.
d4. Oof. But this is a big problem. Bortnik fights with f5. It was the only way to play.
Wow. The triple fork. And he will
Yes,
snap off
but
that
maybe
rook.
Bortnik survives.
Yeah, this is one of those
Crazy.
situations that I'm always really curious about. The two minor pieces versus the rook. Which position would you rather be in, right?
Well, on the better side. Yes, but
Yeah. Always the better side.
yes, and look at this. Yeah, it's a very tricky kind of scenario because both sides have chances, but now e6. Yeah, exactly e6, and the knight will take the g5 pawn if you capture on e6. Be careful.
Yeah, pawns are falling. 3 pawns apiece. And again, now it's just that rook that has to kind of pull double duty against both minor pieces. As the game progresses and more pawns fall off the board, I more and more favor the knight and the bishop here being able to work in concert with each other or being able to split
There
sides of the
is rook
board and force
c4,
the attention. Oh, can he do?
but be
I
careful. There's
love
rook
this move.
c4 and b3. Ah, wow, but rook c2 check. Okay, still there is rook c4, but okay, also rook h2 possible. It should be a draw now. But players down to few seconds.
Yeah, 1 second here for Alexander Bortnik. 2 second increment.
Bortnik
So the
in
moves are about
trouble.
to start flying out. Yeah, very much
In
in
a lot
trouble.
of trouble. He should be losing because the pawn is falling, and also rook c4 wins on the spot, actually. But okay, rook f4, and now he takes.
There it is. He finds it. He's going to snap off that bishop. He will give up his rook to do so, but too little too late here for Alexander Bortnik to find his way across the board and defend against the promotion. That means the resignation comes through. Marco Materia gets the victory. I mean, again, you mentioned our debut Freestyle Friday broadcast. We spent a lot of time watching this kid, and for good reason, because he continues to impress on the freestyle stage and in these quicker time controls.
Yes, very impressive. First of all, we know how strong Bortnik is, but actually Bortnik got fooled by the complexity of the position, and he was also way too long on time. Yeah, he was down to 1 second constantly, so he was somehow unable to adjust to the situation that actually he got a chance. Yeah, he got a chance, and then he was suddenly playing for a win, and that's why he lost it. Yeah, this is crazy how chess is. By creating chances, you suddenly play for a win, but with little time on the clock, then you cannot make an automatic move. Yeah, when you play for survival, then you always play the only move that so-called helps you to stay in the game. But when you have a chance, then you hesitate, you want to find the correct move, then the clock ticks on, and then you can make a mistake, a big panic reaction, and you blunder something.
I mean, it speaks to the nature of chess as a game, but also, the precariousness of any winning position, right? It's so easy for us as viewers, particularly those viewers who are maybe at more my level of chess knowledge, to look at an eval bar and say, well, this is a decisively winning position. Of course, this guy's going to bring it to the end. But what we might not see behind that eval bar is that it's an only move, decisive victory, and that any other move is going to either flip the script or bring it right back to equality. And like you say, sometimes players, as soon as they feel that now they can play for a win or are playing in a winning position, that actually, it creates more forks in the road and more possibilities for them to make the wrong move as opposed to playing stable.
Yeah, for example, now this position that we are having here, yeah, the computer says it is a complete draw, but believe me, it's so easy to lose this. And in fact, in my mind, black will lose this position, believe me, because white will potentially push g5, put king to e7, then give a check. Yes, this is kind of the method. Shoulder away the king, then the king comes to f6, and finally you won't be able to protect. But g5, bishop d1, what a defense! Incredible defense by Ethan. White should have fixed with g5 before.
Yeah, a great resource there, defensive resource to remove one of the pawns. And now the king can slide up here. Beautiful defense.
Yeah, now just don't blunder your bishop and then you are fine. Actually, there is this golden rule that if you are fighting with the bishop versus the knight, then keep the bishop as far away as possible from action. Yes, so going with the bishop to a4 or to b1, this is exactly the right strategy. Just don't be next to your king, because then you suddenly might jump into some fork.
So adhering to his chess principles here, you love to see it. And even when the pressure's on, now the white king trying to get a little bit tricky, close the distance on the black bishop. We're about to reset the game clock all the way back to 3 minutes apiece with the speed they're moving at.
Yeah, well, there is nothing to play for. Yeah, before it was very, very tricky with 2 versus 1. Yeah, but with one pawn versus the bishop, then black can always sacrifice the bishop for the pawn.
It is quite fascinating, though, how much a pawn, to the point that you're making right now, just that singular pawn being back on the board would kind of change what we're playing for entirely.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's time to call it a day, because there is just nothing to be achieved. I mean, from Renato, because all the other players are also waiting, for the next round to start. Probably Renato will. But wait a second, he went down to 1 second when he made a move. Don't do this. Did he get
Yeah,
disconnected?
playing with fire a
Yes,
little bit
go.
there.
Okay.
There we go. The draw. Insufficient material as the pawn gets picked up. Minor piece per player means half a point apiece to Renato and Ethan here in this one. Through 4 rounds. Take a look at the standings and look at that. Only 2 players all of a sudden still come through the 4th round unscathed. That's Marco Materia and Nara Yanan at 4-0. So very good looks for both of them. A whole bunch of players in the chase pack at 3.5 points apiece, with still 7 rounds to go here on Freestyle Friday. We are going to take a quick break before we head into round number 5. 5 minutes on the clock. So everybody go to the bathroom, grab a drink of water. We'll meet you back here in just 5 minutes' time to get you into that 5th round of the day here on Freestyle Friday. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody, to another Freestyle Friday event. 4 rounds down, 7 to go here before we declare a winner for the day. And that winner picks up a nice chunk of change as well as 10 points when it comes to the overall standings in our Freestyle Friday race, let's say, for the qualification of the 2027 FIDE Freestyle World Championship. We got 2 players who currently are setting the pace for the rest of the field, and you can see them up top, our standings right there. Undefeated so far through 4 games, 4 points to their names, and a whole bunch of players nipping at their heels at 3.5 points. And so we'll see if the likes of Marco Materia or Narayanan can keep themselves out front of the rest. And they're going to have to do so, Peter, by facing off against each other here. So somebody, or rather perhaps both of them, are exiting this scathed for the first time in the day.
Yes, well, first of all, we have already talked enough about Marco. Let me say a couple of words about Narayanan Sunildut, because just not so long ago, he was a 2700 player. Yes, and he was extremely powerful, very good, and I did not know exactly how far he can reach, but I felt like this 2680, 2710 kind of range is absolutely justified. And then suddenly something happened. Yeah, very often some psychological moment, somehow something happens, you lose this direction, you lose your motivation, you lose your confidence, and it might come back. I very much hope so, because I really like Sonny Lut as a player. Also as a person, he's very nice, just like all the Indians. But right now he's in some trouble, because the Magnus Carlsen kind of idea of getting the pawn all the way to e5, grab space, and now with the bishops on g1 and h1 beautifully lined up, yeah, those bishops are already kind of developed. So they shouldn't be underestimated. The bishop on g7 is out of the game thanks to his powerful pawn on e5. But black has created some counterplay with this queen e8, queen a4 maneuver.
Yeah, some definite counterplay. You can probably largely ignore the X on your screen that the engine is giving to that queen move. Feels like the engine itself is a little bit confused.
Yes, now after c4, things are changing. I'm not liking, because black has ideas like moving the knight from b6 to d7, and potentially maybe even getting this counterplay with b7, b5 after knight d7, and then this kind of construction with king on c1, rook on b1 is a little bit murky. And look at that, queen on a4 actually does a brilliant job, because white is unable to get his king to the other side of the board. D5.
This is a double question mark for sure. To me, that knight d7 to open up space for the pawn rather felt fairly intuitive. You brought your queen to this side of the board. Why not continue to put pressure on this side of the board? Instead, we're striking in the center.
Yes, well, it is kind of an interesting move. The question is, does it work though? That's the big question, because it's not only that white's king is compromised, but the same applies to black's king. And the big question is that actually, can white actually do the castle by just keeping the king on c1? But Marco says, forget about castling. I'm gonna hunt that pawn on e7. I have the right to capture it. Really?
Well, he'll have to prove that right, as the bishop has found itself onto the 7th rank here, targeting the rook.
But only now I understand. It's not about hitting the rook. It's setting up the heat to b3 fork. That's the problem. Wait a second, b3. Because the bishop actually protects back on a3. So what about b3?
That's a great find. Wow.
Ooh.
Wow. Normally you would be thinking, an easy queen takes a3 with a check, but because the bishop is protecting with that long sight line, now you get the fork. It is found. It gets the exclam. Queen will obviously have to retreat, but that means we're giving up a knight.
Yes, and it will be liquidation, but it's not just that it will be pawn down endgame, but it will be opposite colored bishop endgame with a lovely bishop versus the completely shut down bishop on g7. Thanks to this beautiful, the line that I'm talking about is bishop takes c4, queen c4, we just trade everything. You take the bishop, yeah, you take the piece back, but I have an extra pawn, and what an extra pawn. This lovely, beautiful pawn chain. He goes rook e7. No, no, you can't do that. Knight
That's
d6
the
check.
wrong order. Yeah, that's the wrong order. Oh, from bad to
can't
worse
survive
here.
this. Actually, white does not need to. Yeah, white can of course castle. I thought like you could put this rook and then king b2 and then the other rook here, but you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah, spoiled for choice now, but just an absolutely suffocating position here. Marco Materia looking poised to move to 5-0 if he can close this one out. He's got a beautiful connect 4 pawn chain with the knight leading the charge at the front there on the 6th rank. The rooks are centralized. They're working well, and now the pawns will start marching down the board.
Wow, wow, wait a second. Yes, okay, knight d4 because it breaks the pin. Yeah, for a moment I had a heart attack, like not like we are falling into the only trap in the position, but no, the knight blocks the diagonal, so everything is fine.
Nicely played. I mean, I think so often, right, in chess, but in many sports, so once you find yourself into a winning position, one of the best questions you can ask yourself is how do I lose from here, right? And making sure that you're checking those boxes of where are the losing possibilities and guarding specifically against those losing possibilities. That was one of the few tricks in play there for Black's position. Marco Materia deals with it very well, and he'll continue to kind of march forward and make progress here. We do see the knight coming forward with a check. King just retreats to a1.
Yeah, I'm tempted just to play rook c1 and then rook ed1. Yeah, just jadoubing the rooks one side, little side step. Of course, for sure there are many, maybe even some tactical ways to win it, but I like to be, very clinical. And he goes for knight takes f5. Wow, for the sharpest of them all. I'm just old school, and old school says if you are winning, don't do anything fancy. There is no need for it. But
Right.
Marco is young. He's excited. Bishop d5 check. And
yeah, he's new school.
He delivers checkmate.
New school for sure.
Yeah, king h5, bishop f3, checkmate. That's what he's about to do. And okay, bishop f6, now he just collects.
$17 seconds on the clock to find it. Would imagine he'll pick up that bishop. Rook is protected, obviously, by the pawn. Nice, clean find. Bishop slides out of the way as well. Opting not for the trade there. Rook for a bishop goes from bad to worse here.
Yeah, transformation. The pawn on f5 is hanging. Rook c1, checkmate is a threat, so be careful. But yes, the bishop on f7 is eliminated, and then it's a game over.
Wow. Somewhat clinical here.
Yeah,
there it is. Resignation. Marco Materia 5-0, not showing really, not even a scratch on him through 5 games, right? Nobody's yet been able to wound him.
Yeah, incredible performance. Really incredible. But it also gives us the chance to go to some other games. Saran against Yakuboev still in progress with some crazy time scramble.
All right, and as we arrive, we'll try to take stock. This is another situation where the rook is up against 2 minor pieces. Of course, both players still have their queen in play, and there is an extra pawn here in favor of Black. Only 1 square from promotion.
Wow, bishop c8. Oh my god, queen b7 checkmate is inevitable. Oh no, queen c... Yeah, that's it. Queen c5 checkmate.
Wow.
Queen b4.
Wow, we got here just in time to see it.
Woo! Well, it
Noterbek Yakuboyev, he falls down. This
yes.
was one of the guys at the top of our standings. This was one of the guys we were talking about possibly getting that qualification spot in 3 weeks' time to the 2027. You can see it on his face right there. He's disappointed in his performance so far. He now knows the difficult position that he finds himself in. He was already a half a point out of first place. Now he's a full point and a half out of first place after taking that loss.
Wow. Yeah, that really hurts because when we just joined in, it looked like he has everything under control. The big question is he able to win or not? But only he can win the position. And then suddenly this Bishop C8 attack from nowhere. He did not see it coming. He thought like White cannot do anything. And in fact, just one move prior to that, he could have won the game. So it just shows that how if he just moves the rook back to e7, guards everything, kicks that queen from the perfect spot on h7, and then where is this queen going? Yeah, for example, queen h8 would be the most natural, trying to give some checks. Then we can play rook e8 one more time, and potentially there will be this queen f3 move that wins. Yeah, for example, the white queen falls back to h7, and then we just play queen f3, threatening h1 queen, and if you pick up the pawn, we pick up the bishop, and it's game over. So exactly after bishop f5, rook f6, he lost the game because of bishop c8, and with rook e7, he could have just won it.
And I was amazed how quickly Sarana found it. Like that was an instantaneous capitalization on the miss there in the rook placement.
Yes, because he also knew that he's fighting for his life, so he was very alert. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, that he knew exactly that. There is this one trick, the only trick in the position that can save me. Sometimes, you even don't have the time to realize that it's winning. You just know that this is good for me. And after bishop c8, then to your shock and to your opponent's shock, you realize actually it's over. It's checkmate.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a question as to whether or not the player's necessarily aware that the move is gonna shoot the eval bar as far as it does. Right? Again, we have that benefit of seeing how much of a winning move it is. In his mind, though, he just knows it's my only trick, perhaps. Right? So it is my best chance. It is what I have to go for. So finding it out of necessity, if anything, but it pays dividends for him in the long run.
For sure. Yeah, this is actually a very important win. During the break, I used the chance to look up what's happening with Pranav, because you remember we talked about it, that loss, what kind of consequences it will have. And he lost another game to the very strong David Paravian. He was also very unlucky with the pairings. But so prior to this fifth round, he was 2 out of 4, which is already scary.
Whoa, that is terrifying.
Yes.
That is, but and again, it speaks to just kind of the nature of these Freestyle Fridays. They're fast moving, yes, but also they're unforgiving in a large sense of the word. You don't know who you're going to be paired against. You get those pairings, you quit. You have to immediately dive into a position you've never seen before. We're really stacking the odds against each of the players in a number of ways, but one player who seems to have dealt with all the obstacles we're throwing at them is Marco Materia. Now sole possession of first place, 5-0, no draws, no losses through 5 games today. We've got 4 players now who are just behind him, half a point behind, to round out our top 5, and then a slew of players still within striking distance, only 1 point behind our top dog, sitting at 4 points apiece. So still anybody's game, as we're just about to crest the halfway point of the day. From round 5 to round 6 we go of our 11-round Swiss format. And once again, we're going to put the spotlight on Marco Materia and the players who are looking to take him down. This time around, it's going to be Dimitri, who's looking to do what no one else has been capable of doing just yet, and hand at least a draw over to Marco Materia.
Well, if I beat me, then he will think like, okay, let me play the game. I consider myself a favorite because he's a world-class player. Yeah. So if you are a world-class player, then you don't really care about the points of your opponent. Yeah. You just believe in yourself. And also he has the white pieces. He also got something out of the opening because it's a symmetrical kind of position where it looks like the extra tempo that white was able to hit that knight immediately with f4. And where is this knight heading actually creates serious chances for white to get the upper hand.
And speaking of white getting the upper hand, with that knight move right there, ill-advised, at least from the engine's perspective. What am I missing? What is this opening up in terms of options here for white?
Well, f5, it's played by Dima. Dimitri played f5, it hits the knight and attacks the other knight. So basically, black is forced to play knight 6 to e5, but then suddenly there's queen f4, double attack, hitting the e5 knight and hitting the g4 knight. Black has lost a piece.
So that's what it looks like by all accounts. And now maybe we're seeing the realization here more than anything on the clock of Marco Materia, right? He just chewing through time now, looking for his best way forward. Down to 140 on the clock. He does decide to go for the pawn here with the light squared bishop.
He captured the knight on e4. That was correct. Yeah, bishop takes g4, bishop c6. That's the only way for black to kind of hang on to the piece because there is this pin. The big problem is, however, that white has different ways. Like white can just protect the pawn with the bishop with a pawn move like h3, or he opts with queen d1, protecting the bishop. And where is this knight moving? If f6, white might be trapping the queen. So that gives us the feeling like knight f8 might be the only move. Or is bishop d7? Is bishop d? Yeah, bishop d7 is the move that was played.
Yeah, which it deals with the immediate threat, right? But it feels like it just creates more long-term issues for the development of my own pieces.
Yeah, but now for me, the big question is that did this come as a shock to Dima? Because if it was a shock and he thought like game has already finished, I'm winning a piece and it's over, then actually bishop d7, that the game progresses, can be a big blow psychologically. So bishop takes g4, f takes g, bishop g4, g takes h7. Wow, we are seeing some fancy stuff. Bishop takes g7 is hanging in the air.
Yeah, queen slides up to d3 just to protect the pawn and keep it as a promotion threat further down the line. It also kind of locks that rook into place. So what a powerful pawn that is, sitting on the 7th rank, as you're highlighting there. Bishop as well, pairing up with the queen to kind of put a lot of pressure on that right-hand side of the board. And now we're finally seeing Marco able to get his queen involved, offering a trade of queens here.
Yes, this is good, but the problem is that this was strictly the only move. However, if white is cool and takes on d7, bishop takes d7, and plays the move short castle, a move that, you know, evacuates the king from the left side of the board all the way to the right side with a tempo, hitting the pawn on f7, and followed it up with rook a d1. Okay, he opts for long castle, but this gives black some chances. Bishop g5
it gives
check.
Black time. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? It just gave him enough. It gave him the tempo for this move here. Check on the board. The bishop is now involved. It opens up the king and the rook to possibly castle themselves along castle on black side and get his rook involved further down the line. Right now would be ill-advised.
And look at this. Look at the face expression of Dimitri. He just cannot believe. And I told you that this was the biggest problem, that it looked like it's game over. And if you miss something and the game continues, and actually he's worse. He has to defend, and he's also behind on the clock. Very difficult and very dangerous spot to be in.
Yeah, and just like that, he's got to give up one of his rooks here. So now we're playing minor pieces and a rook per player. We do have a discrepancy in the fact that it's 2 bishops for Marco Materia with black. It's a bishop and a knight on the side of Dimitri.
Yeah, it's a very unpleasant kind of position. Of course, black plays b6. Well, I really hope that Andrei Kim will hold this game, because otherwise he will go crazy. This was such a chance to win the game outright from the opening, and missing that chance. Oof.
Yeah, hand on head. It's you could kind of, as you're saying, feels like he's trying to stop himself from going crazy in this moment.
Yes. And after having all these adventures, Marco is super happy with the draw, because the draw is like a win. But we already know that these youngsters are very motivated. And look at this. He's about to lose
Oh no.
something. Yeah, he's losing it.
Uh,
It's over.
Wow. Wow. From the ashes of defeat, Marco Materia, he rises again. What is happening?
Yeah, complete disaster. Complete disaster for Andreikin.
Disaster for Andreikin, and honestly, great composure here by Marco in what was a very precarious position early on. Would have been easy for him to maybe admit defeat or accept that this one had gotten out of his hands in some way, shape, or form. But he fights on, and now he finds himself in a winning position. Still has to find a way to bring it to a close, but he's got twice the pawns that his opponent has to work with.
Yeah, this is absolutely hopeless. But the point was that he really found all the only moves in the position. Yeah, that was the point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, now there is some intrigue, but King F3 is just winning because you have no time to pick up the pawn, then the G pawn marches through. And Marco was finding all the only moves, drove Dima crazy. That wait a second, I thought game was already finished, and so on. And then finally he missed something, and that's it.
Yeah, I feel like it goes back to allowing that bishop move, right? We talked about the long castles, which allowed that one moment, that one opening for Marco to get the bishop out onto the board with the check and the tempo.
Yes.
And that brought us back to equality and changed things, flipped them completely on their head. There it is. Marco Materia gets a win by resignation. A bit of a shock on Dimitri's face. A bit of a shock on our faces probably as well based on the way that one started. But now 6-0 as we crest the halfway point. Still the man to beat is Marco Materia. And as we have our standings up on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see right now there's only one player half a point out. Still a few more games in play there, though, as we hop on over to Artine versus Jeffries Young here. 4.5 points versus 4 points. So the grandmaster playing with the black pieces again on the black foot. And now Artine is looking like he might go up to 5.5 and join a fight for second or maybe even first place by the end of the day.
Wow. Yeah, now white has all these pass pawns, G7, D7 now, played A6 as well. But how to win it with no time on the clock? Yeah, the knight is heading to F6. That's the winning construction, knight F6. But still Jeffrey is fighting.
Jeffrey is fighting. Okay, he's going to promote
he
in order
gets
to
to
get
the
rid
pawn.
of the bishop. What?
Yes, he's in time to collect the pawn. Oof, what an escape.
Wow. He's going to get away with a draw in this one. Insufficient material, but I mean, I'm sure Jeffries, he's probably not too happy with the result based on the matchup, but he'll be happy with the result based on the state of the board, at least by the time that we arrived at the board to see it.
Yes, definitely. There should be a big smile on his face because pulling this one, surviving this one, this is like a double win. This is completely insane. By the way, we still have action. We have seen Amova in torturing his opponent and probably going on to win, and that will be very important. Yeah, the knight is heading to E8.
Yeah, hugely important because he's sitting at 3.5 if he wants any chance to fight for a podium spot here today and a share of the prize pool. It's going to have to come off the heels of a victory here, but he looks poised to do so.
Yes, it is absolutely Resign's territory.
Yeah, 2 pawns and a king versus a king. You can shuffle all you like, but eventually that king is going to have to move off the promotion square, as we've seen. Pawn promotes to a queen. Let's go for a second one. Why not?
Yes, I also don't really understand the point of playing with increment because you just cannot flag your opponent. You have 0 chances. Why just not
testing
to
his chess
design?
principles. Yeah, you keep, if I'm your opponent, you keep playing. You keep playing because there's a possibility of the blunder. In that situation, I think the resignation could have been called for a few moves sooner But like you say, that was a necessary victory for Sinner, at least when it comes to his overall performance for today's standings. Still not even making it necessarily onto our current top 10 leaderboard as we pull. Or actually, I take that back. He'll just slot into that 8th spot, a tie for 8th with a bunch of other players at 4.5. A 1.5 out of first. So that means 2 games would be required just to strike at Marco Materia in first place. So really it's that pack of 5-point players and 5.5-point players in Alexei Sarana that we're looking at now as we move into the latter half of the day and we start to kind of iron out who will be the real contenders for the top spot, for the podium finishes, to grab those points, moving towards that June 26th date, 3 weeks time or 2 weeks time from today in terms of qualifying for the 2027 FIDE Freestyle Chess World Championship. Marco Materia, the man to beat here today, but we still see a lot of those big names just behind him. Off we go into round number 7, and it is going to be Marco Materia up against Alexei Sarana. So this is your number 1 and your number 2. This could be a very, very, very big matchup when it comes to who comes out on top at the end of the day with $400 in their pocket and 10 points in the Freestyle Friday overall standings.
Yeah, I think those 10 points, those are the most important things because so much nerves at play. I have just checked out where is Bortnik, yeah, because we have been covering at the beginning his games. He was having a good start, and then he lost 2 consecutive games. So not only Pranav lost 2 already, but also Bortnik. It just shows that this tension that there are only 3 more tournaments to go, and the race is so close. It puts tremendous pressure on the players.
Yeah, you've got players like Noterbek Yakuboyev and Alexander, both sitting at 4 points through 7 games. Speaks to the overall level of play and level of the players in the field. That giants like them could be down in 13th and 14th position here, and speaks to the momentum and just the fact that Marco Materia is having quite the day for himself, that he still sits undefeated amongst a field of players like that.
Yes, and if you just have in your mind what did he survive in the previous round, that might also give you the feeling that this should be the tournament, this should be his tournament. But one should never really think so far ahead because Sadhana is also feeling like, wait a second, finally I'm fighting for something. I'm 5.5 out of 6. I'm super happy with my performance. And whoever just plays chess will succeed, I believe. Now takes rook h8, eliminating all the active rooks, the first step.
Yeah, H-file open though now as a result. All right, I want to trade on my own terms, says Marco Materia. So he'll slide the rook back, says if you want... Go ahead.
Yeah, but actually the H-file is not so important. But with rook h4, Sadhana signals that he has some desire to really spice things up. Yeah, because if he would have just traded on h3 and then get knight c8, knight d6 regrouping, which anyway might be happening in the next moves, but he's going for the active counterplay with knight c4. Wow.
I like it though, because it also feels like White's queen is kind of stuck out of the game for a period of time now, right? It has to play defense to that pawn. It's already shut out on that diagonal by its own pawn. So I could see some long-term issues here for White in terms of getting her re-involved.
Yeah, but also there's this knight d2, knight f3. This pawn can be strong and it can be also a weakness. And I think that we might be seeing that this is a big weakness. Wait a second. Can I just take on g6? And if fg, then knight f3, and I'm collecting that pawn?
Well, it seems like the answer is yes, as the bishop is quick to pick up that knight. And now you can see kind of an uncomfortable smirk on Alexei Sarana's face as he's now evaluating the position, maybe wishing for a couple moves that he could have back.
Exactly.
Recognizing that pawn is becoming the weakness.
Yeah, look at the clock situation. He almost has 2 minutes. There was absolutely no reason to rush so much. Yeah, because he had everything under control. He might have even had chances to fight for initiative. In any case, no risk whatsoever. And then all of a sudden he blitzes out 2 moves and he's lost.
Marco Materia going to keep pressure on both sides of the board as the pawn moves to a4, but that knight finally does land onto f3, supporting a potential push here onto g5, as you're highlighting now. Just continuing to grab a little space. You can see now the position for black just feels terrible in terms of the placement of the minor pieces. Pawns come off the board, but that light squared bishop feels like it's light years from being involved in this game. And as every move comes in, the eval bar is just creeping more and more and more in favor of white, loving the position.
Of course, yeah, because you are just a healthy pawn up, a strong pawn up, and also you have this lovely e5 post for the knight. So queen f6 might be also a big threat. Black is completely lost. Yeah, sometimes you are pawn down with potential to fight, but this one is just hopeless.
A hopeless position, a hopeless look on Alexei's face as he searches for any resource, any source of recourse in this position. He's going to go for an a6 pawn push. Feels like a waiting move, if nothing else. Just hoping now for maybe a mistake that you can capitalize on out of your opponent. Creates just a little bit of space for the king to maneuver. But outside of that, speaks to the difficulty of the position here for black to make any progress.
Yes, no, it's such a hopeless position, and the reason why I was not suggesting a single move for white, because every move was good, and it very much depends on your character. That do you go for direct attempt? For example, now you can take knight takes d5, but you can also just continue with queen g5, and probably after knight e7, if black goes after the pawn, then you want to go knight e2, knight f4, and rely on the pin.
Okay, but we have at least what the
Oh,
engine is
wow,
calling a
he
miss
can take.
here.
No, because you know he can take with the knight. Look at this. Let me show this. 97, 92 looks like it's lost. But then you take with the knight, and if I take knight, then you can take with the queen. And if I go knight f4, you have queen e7. And then you suddenly end up in this position. You are pawn down, but this one you can fight for a draw. This one has some chance. It's bad, but it's not
And
designable. So all eyes
perfect timing.
on Sarana.
Perfect timing to show that on the board, Peter, because look at what's about to play out.
Wow, this is exactly what happened. Yeah, Sarana immediately jumping on his chance. He might survive this.
Yeah, it's still not easy, but it was basically the only way for survival.
Yes, but look at this. The bishop is almost trapped, but luckily for Alexei, he has bishop c6. If the knight somehow can get back, but yeah, the knight has to go in for a journey, but finally it finds a safe spot on e4.
Wow. And now all of a sudden, the position all of a sudden just feels so much more solid for black. I mean, white's not in danger either, right? But to go from where we were maybe 5-6 moves ago to where we are now is just a bit of insanity in my brain.
Yeah, completely crazy. And also that Sadana was very lucky that he was not only escaping, but he was also able to eliminate that e3 pawn. So he got his pawn back. And now he has very good drawing chances. Knight c3, and then he will push a4. White will be forced to take ba, and then bishop a4. You get access to white's weaknesses as well. It should be an easy draw.
Should be a draw, and that'll keep the two players in our 1 and 2 positions, as Alexei was the one who was chasing Marco coming into this game. If he was able to get the decisive victory, he would have leapfrogged him. Instead, they will stay half a point separated. Wait
a second. What did Alexei do? Because the computer still says it's fine, but this is very tricky. It can be just lost. He finds the only move according to computer, bishop s3, but why on earth do you get into this craziness?
Yeah, bishop has to move again, being targeted by that knight.
Bishop e4. He escapes, but oi, this was very scary what he was doing.
"15 seconds on the clock. Knight will jump forward."
Yeah, both sides are kind of stalemated. Nothing moves. So yeah.
Okay, one more pawn apiece.
happened. Yeah, but d4 pawn is hanging and he has bishop g4 check and then captures. Okay, he goes bishop d5. Okay, now he can take on c6, take on d4. No, he does not. He could have taken back both pawns.
Yeah, it feels like that would have been the easier way. Just get more pieces off the board, but
Yes.
because with
Yeah, now he
well,
goes
now
for.
one pawn in play.
Yeah, he goes for the two knights versus one knight. Yeah, it's kind of even two knights versus pair kings. Pair king is a draw, but yes, okay. No, it's petered out.
Péter Lékó has claimed that it petered
Oh,
out. The players agree.
yes.
That's a draw between Alexei Sarna and Marco Materia. 6.5 points for Marco. It's 6 points for Alexei. So the two of them, they still stay at the top of the leaderboard. But what was a huge opportunity, I would have to say, for Sarna in this one to take the decisive victory and ultimately leapfrog, he will not be able to capitalize on it. He still is within striking distance as we head on over to Norbert Yakuboyev up against Valery Kazakuski. These two players probably not where they would have hoped to have been through 7 rounds in the day, 4 points apiece. But Norbert does get the win, so he does a little bit in service of climbing back up the leaderboard and in those standings now at 5 points to his name. You can see there on the right-hand side of your screen, just barely grabbing 10th place and keeping himself within the conversation, but kind of still well outside what would be an ultimate podium finish, considering the likes of the people who are still out in front of him. A couple players sitting at 3 points here as we're looking to conclude our 7th round of the day.
Yeah, because actually this game is completely winning for black. There are no dramas here and has also plenty of time. We can maybe look at the standings and speculate a little bit about the overall situation because it might be more important.
Yeah, so as we pull those up,
Yes.
again, this is just the standings as they are through our current round for those of you at home. So 7 games in the books. And we now have nobody who is, I would say, or has won their way entirely through, as Marco Materia just agreed to that draw for the first time today. 6.5 points to his name, Alexei, the only one sitting in second place with 6 points, but it's that pack of players at 5.5. So that's what I would be looking at. And for you, Peter, with 3 or 4 more games to go, who are you looking at? Who do you really think has a shot at taking Marco Materia down? Or do you feel like the way that Marco's playing today, he's just separated himself from the rest and he's going to run away with this?
No, I don't think so. Yes, he had a fantastic, phenomenal day, but the tournament is so crazy and so wide with so many great players that you can never feel yourself safe unless it is really over. And just looking at players like Grishuk, okay, he has already played against Andreikin, but also Sina Movahed. I really feel like Sina might still be causing some real trouble for the guys like Marco and Alexei. But also, let's just keep an eye on Nodiebek Yakuboev and Alexander Bortnik. They are next to each other with 5 points each. So actually, that's kind of good news for Bortnik that he's not having a great event. But one of his main concurrents is also not run away with the tournament. And even Pranav, where is Pranav? Let's take a look at. Let me try to find him.
I was going to say, I'm looking for him as well. Pranav is in 17th place at 5 points. He's actually also got 5 points
also
to his
5
name.
Points. Yes.
Yeah. So again, some of the bigger names that we were talking about at the top of the day, while they're not, currently at the top of the leaderboards, they're still in a position where they could make things interesting coming down the home stretch here.
Yes, and basically the situation did not really change for Bortnik because he's the player who is leading the tournament. Yeah, so all the other guys like Marco, Alex said, they are not his opponents at all. So he has to keep an eye on what Pranav and what Yakuboev is doing. And as long as they are not ahead of him, everything is fine. He can chill. That actually might also be psychologically very important.
Yeah, well, I already see the pairings that just popped up on my screen. The games are just about to get started here for round number 8. But you called out seen him overhead as one of the guys that could really make things interesting here today. He's going to test his mettle up against Marco Materia in this next round. I'm looking at some of the other names that we called out. Pranov, he's up against Cristobal. And then we've got Nurbek Yakoboyev up against David Paravian, who you spoke about earlier. And Alexander Bortnik, he's up against Mitraba Guha. So those will be three matches that we look to track as well, all chasing a couple of our top contenders in the likes of Cinema Overhead and Marco Materia. We're underway in our 8th round. We'll soon get into the gameplay as quickly as we can to keep you all apprised of the action as things are heating up here.
Yes, it seems like white got the upper hand in the center, but black actually has very nice coordination. Black is opening up the bishops immediately, so the e4 pawn is not necessarily a stronghold. It might also be a target, potentially. It's probably more or less equal position. The big question, if white has time to get b3 in, castle, coordinate forces, then in the long run, white has the potential to be better. Yeah, so it is in black's interest to use the time. Wow, h5. No. I disapprove this move. This is an impulsive move, and you shouldn't be.
Well,
Okay, but at least he's doing it with a purpose. Yeah, he wants to activate the rook. Fancy business with rook h5.
yeah. Which, I mean, I think the point you just made, or rather the statement you just made, the fact that he's at least proving why he did it. There's a purpose behind it. It isn't so much just a lackluster waiting move anymore. But now he has to prove it, right? It's kind of one of those situations where you say, all right, well, now you have to prove the value of that move to me.
But actually, it's interesting because the way how Marco is saying that he goes for the most ambitious way of castling from g1 to c1.
Oh
Actually,
my goodness.
Okay, we play instantly g3. We instantly play g3, and I think this benefits white because white anyway wants to play f4 and potentially get the pawn to e5. This f4 e5 pawn chain would be fantastic. What is Movahed Sina doing really? I'm not approving this at all.
Yeah, it's an aggressive move to say the least, provocative, but the question is, what does it achieve in the end? Doesn't look like much. King will slide its way over to b1 before knight and bishop stare each other down on c4, c5. Now the rook will come into play, justifying those earlier pawn pushes. But again, the question is really, what is this rook going to accomplish? Was it worth all the time it took to get it developed? And the amount of control that you've now offered your opponent towards the center of the board in that time.
Exactly, and the little move f2, f3 basically signals to your opponent that where are you going, my friend? Because the only vulnerable point is this e4 square, which is now beautifully protected. And if this pawn is protected, then actually this rook has nowhere to go on the 5th rank. What is it really doing? So the only benefit that black has is this pin against the bishop on a1 and some tactical kind of idea, but I don't see that tactic really happening. There are no threats.
Yeah.
I can always protect the f3 pawn. Besides, the f3 pawn is not even hanging because of rook f1, bishop takes f7 problem.
There you go. Oh, and this is never what you want to see. After spending all that time to unlock the rook retreats back to the 7th rank. And it's shut back out of the game.
Yeah, this is going to be a massacre now. Because black has to fall back with the queen. Yeah, he takes on f3, but this is what I mentioned. Queen f3 is always met by rook f1, and then the f7 pawn is falling with a check and with devastating consequences. What is he up to?
All right. Well, 1 minute and 8 seconds on the clock after the move is made. It's the move we do expect. Minor pieces about to disappear from the board.
Yeah, this was his trick, that suddenly the rook from h7 protects back to... And knight takes d4, yeah, the tactics, but queen takes d7. Yeah, I was calculating this line. It's completely insane, because knight takes d3 check, and then you just move the king to a1, and everything is hanging. It's complete chaos. and it's on the board,
Wow.
but white is winning. Too many problems.
Yeah.
Brilliant play by
Sinner's move
Marco.
to make. Just stable play by Marco, right? He didn't really do anything fancy this time around. He just played very stable, let his opponent, in a sense, lose the game as opposed to taking the game himself. Didn't need to do anything fancy here.
Yes, sometimes all you need to do is just stabilize your position, and black feels under pressure, the opponent feels under pressure and thinks that he has to do something. And in fact, if you do something, then you get punched like Marco has done. It's a beautiful tactical sequence and also very confidently went for it, calculating all these lines.
Oof. 25 seconds here. Even if Sinner does find a decent move now, he's not going to have much time to make moves for the remainder of the game.
Well, there is no defense because if you play queen e4, there's even rook takes f7 with a devastating effect. Actually, black gets checkmated. Yeah, queen e4, and now there's rook takes f7, which finishes the game on the spot. Bishop f7 also wins, but rook f7 is the brutal one.
Marco just got to do his due diligence here. Make sure there's no tricks in play, as I'm sure he's evaluated this as a winning position. What could push him now up to 7.5 points and make him nearly untouchable, given the fact that he's currently playing against the only guy in second place and the only guy who's half a point behind him. This would be a massive victory in the 8th round of the day here. It won't mean that Marco has it completely wrapped up, but it puts him in. There it is, rook f7.
Yeah, rook f7, but still, Sina played the only move bishop d5, and look at the position. Down to 10 seconds. It's still anybody's game because it's not easy. Bishop d5, knight d5, check. King b1, knight c3, check. Black is doing fine. Knight takes a2.
He checks again. He picks up the pawn with it. He buys back a little bit of time. 10 seconds on the clock here for Sinner. Both players working with very little time. You can kind of see now the nerves kicking in. Knight will make one more move, gets a few seconds back on the clock. Does he see that this is winning here for himself, or is he's going to try and get away with the repetition? Wow.
Yes,
I mean,
he's happy.
What a game.
Yes. Absolutely insane.
Who's happy in this situation? Are you happy if you're Sinner? Do you recognize that maybe that one had flipped on its head? And if you had a little bit more time, you could have gotten the victory and even, jumped in front of your opponent? Or do you think, given how poorly that game started, he's saying, take the draw, run with it. We'll keep ourselves alive for the remaining rounds?
Exactly. I think that he should be super happy. And he shouldn't be even looking at the game that, oh, I could have won at the end. With 5 seconds on the clock and everything is in total chaos mode, you are just very happy that you survived that scare.
All right. Oof. Well, Norbert Yakuboyev versus David Paravian. And just as we arrive, Norbert, he gets the checkmate and the victory. So, again, what was a tumultuous start to the day in a number of ways for Yakuboyev, one of the guys that we had said, you got to you got to be looking for him. He's going to be one of the top dogs, one of the top contenders. He kind of quickly fell out of the conversation, and now he's reinserting himself into the conversation as he moves up to 6 points, now only 1 point behind the tournament leader. And, of course, we're going to hop over to another one of the guys that we wanted to talk about. He does.
Yeah, but Bortnik just got checkmated. It's over.
Look at his face,
this.
too.
I cannot believe it.
What did he miss? We got here just to see the result, not necessarily to see the setup.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. Yeah, this is freestyle chess, and it is blitz with 3 + 2 seconds. When you get down to a couple of seconds and it's a complicated position, then it is so easy to lose control.
Well,
I think now he's checking the game and he's looking at the possibilities that he missed.
A stunned look on his face, doing his best to talk through it, shrug it off.
yeah, talking to himself like, how could I have? Yeah, this is the message that I'm getting from his.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh,
wow,
this utter
it was
distress on
this
his face.
position. What?
It was winning.
Look at, I mean, completely winning. Yeah, a piece up, and he lost this. Yeah, so it will be very difficult to recover from this. These are the heartbreaking kind of scenarios.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Oof, and suddenly he couldn't stop the pawn. All of a sudden, just a couple of moves from a winning position, it went to losing.
Wow.
Ooh,
Guha Mitrala.
it's crazy.
I mean, fantastic find. We spent a lot of time talking about Alexander Bortnik for good reason. But we got to talk about his opponent as well. Look at that. Guha moves up to 6 points, right? So he basically stole the position in a lot of ways from Alexander Bortnik. And here we have the overall standings.
Yeah.
And as you can see, Marco Materia, again, maybe getting a little bit lucky. He's going to have 7 points currently. But Dimitri and Draken right behind him, nipping at his heels, 6.5 points. Conrad Holt as well, 6.5, and Artin Ashraf at 6.5. Those three guys all sharing second place. And then a whole slew of players 1 point out of our current tournament leader. It's Sinem Overhead, one of the guys that we've been talking about, Alexei Sarana, Norbek Yakuboyev. These are very familiar names for many people. Pranov just eking onto the board. Tong Xiao, as you mentioned earlier. And, of course, Renato Terry to round out our top 10 through 8 rounds of the day. We got 3 more rounds to go, 3 more rounds to decide who will be the winner of June 12th Freestyle Friday action, who will put themselves into prime position for the 2027 FIDE Freestyle World Championship. That's a question we'll answer on the other side of a quick break. We'll be back in just 5 minutes' time. Stick around. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Freestyle Friday, the second edition being broadcast out to you live by myself, James Dash, and Péter Lékó. We're in round number 9, so it's the home stretch by all, senses of the word, shall I say, Peter. And it's Marco Materia who still sits with a half a point separation over the chase pack, and a bit by the grace of God in that last game to come away with that draw. I wonder how his nerves are feeling going into the 9th round.
Wow. Well, okay, he's also kicking himself of not having won that game, but yeah, at the end there was this scare. Finally draw, and I think we already see the new starting position. I first thought like there's some technical error, what is happening? And then I realized that no, the rook from A1 is on B1, so the white knight on A1 and rook on B1 are mixed. Yes.
But this is just about the
Very
most
tricky.
standard position we've ever had starting.
Well, and you know what is the point of it? That we played this position in the Granke Freestyle Chess Championship this year. I remember having been doing the commentary, and it was so intriguing. The players were spending like some 20 minutes in the starting position in order to understand what's happening. The thematic discussion was, can Black play the Scandinavian with E4, D5?
All right, and what an amount of time to think here for that opening move. Maybe the computer catching up a little bit here, because it's white who's actually in the time deficit with only a few moves on the board, which is sort of peculiar, because in a position that feels so close to standard, you would think the players would be more willing to blitz out some moves, play to what's comfortable, what's quote unquote known. But here, even just that one discrepancy in piece placement, right, could really shake things up. So in some senses, I'm glad to see the players aren't moving too quickly. But our team with the white side, at some point, he's got to start picking up the pace.
Yes, I'm a little bit even puzzled that do we have some tactical issues, or is really white playing so slowly? Because, okay, bishop d3 is kind of the natural move, and it's like a Petrov. It's like a Petrov with the classical Petrov. And I feel like, yeah, bishop d3 played, and after d5, knight takes e5, it feels like normally black plays knight to d7, but now that the knight is on a8, black cannot challenge the knight on e5, and this should be in white's favor. That's my feeling, but he opts for d takes e5.
Marco, 2.5 minutes to his name, plenty more time to work, actually double his opponent. The young gun has played relatively calm, cool, and collected all day, just escaped a little bit of a disaster in his most recent game. So the question is whether or not that shook him at all, or if he's going to be right back in to the rhythm of it.
Yeah, honestly, I disliked White's decision of capturing with the pawn, because it gets very double-edged. Now, knight c5, it's a thematic. Now, actually, it turns out that black gets an improved version of the Petrov, but okay, he goes f5. It's a good move, but I think knight c5, maybe black could have fought for an advantage already.
Mm-hmm.
Now we are transforming from Petrov to open Spanish kind of territory. The pawn structure resembles very much, of course, there the black pawns are with a6, b5 coming from the rule Lopez, but this structure, the DC pawn and white having these pieces, yeah, rook e1, knight f1, this is now, and then probably playing, putting the pawn on c3, more or less classical chess.
Always looking to find your way to comfort as a player. E-file controlled here by white currently. Bishop will retreat just to make space for that queen to come forward. Now we're rerouting the white knight to the right-hand side of the board. Back to f1.
Yes.
Jumping forward to either
the
e3 or g3.
Usually landing on g3, yes. Normally it goes, but white actually also wants to keep this bishop h4, bishop g3 idea in mind. Yes, that's what he does.
Okay, now the rooks staring each other down. Who will blink first? Always the question. Who will Be willing to trade on the opponent's terms.
Yeah, but now suddenly there is knight e5, and this is the dream kind of trade. Even white gets the dark square bishop, the pair of bishops, and now black has to be super careful not to get into a lot of trouble. Yeah, knight e4 best, but even this bishop takes e4, d takes e4, bishop falls back to g3. Yes, exactly, because you can't take the bishop because of the tactics. And then we just sit on this e3 square. This can be so annoying. White can shuffle his pieces back and forth.
Yeah, white's king feels way more comfortable in this position. Now, we do have a bit of a stab at something here by Marco. Bishop down to a2, snapping off a pawn, coming back. He does give up his own pawn on a7. Rook found its way onto the 7th rank here.
Yeah, basically they just traded pawns. I believe that black will have to challenge that knight. Exactly, knight c4. Black has to eliminate the powerful e3 knight. And then the question, how is white maintaining, this enough pressure in order to be causing some trouble for the opponent? Yeah, queen e2, knight takes e3, queen e3. We always capture with a piece. Yeah, okay, queen b6 played. Double attack, clever move.
Mm-hmm. Right, hitting both the pawn and the rook at the same time. Rook will retreat. Obviously, the pawn is protected by the queen currently.
Yeah,
But
that could be some kind of a trade, but that could also be unpleasant for. No, actually, queen b2 you cannot, because then we take, and all of a sudden bishop d6 traps the rook.
With your own,
Very nasty.
traps the rook. Yeah.
So be careful.
I like that.
Very tricky position.
There we go.
Takes, bishop
We're just
c4.
gonna get rid of some pieces.
Black is, and also black wants to cement his bishop on d3 in order to balance things out. But okay, b4, rook a5. White is putting tremendous pressure.
A bit of a prophylactic move, though, then, defending across on the 5th rank. So instead, white decides d1 is the best square for the rook to land. Okay, queen lining up here. Battery with the bishop. Trade of pawns. Rook comes to the center.
It is still unpleasant, yeah, because the nature of the position is unpleasant, that you have this isolated pawn. White has this super cement structure, yeah, that you can never touch white's position. And black has weakness.
Yeah, bishops on opposite color complexes as well.
Yes, but now with h6, and then if getting the bishop to c6, cemento, the bishop is protected then by the pawn.
There it is. Bishop lands on c6. But it is just kind of this fortress-like construction here for white. I don't know how Marco is ever going to be able to punch through this one.
Well, okay, Marco has to defend.
Yeah, setting up the queen here, who wants to come down to g6.
Yes, be careful. Ooh, g5 in the long run, this should be made. Bishop e3, queen e5. Okay, he wants to trade queens. Will he be able to? Queen g4.
Artine says,
Marco in
no,
trouble.
thank you.
With little time on the clock, this is terrible for black.
Terrible for black, but so far navigating it as best he can. At least by, again, the engine's evaluation of the position. That's maybe the first opening here for white.
There you go. He gets behind.
Yeah, queen and rook working in concert with each other. Defensive move with the queen dropping back. It's the double question mark, though, by the computer. Can our team capitalize on it? That's the question. We now have rooks leave the field. So, again, bishop and queen versus bishop and queen with the bishops on opposite colors. I feel like that's going to feel... Yeah, I was going to say, it feels better for Marco with the rooks off the board. Just less threats on the board.
Of course, now you will not get checkmated. It's still unpleasant because white can, exactly with h4, break the construction. h5, push the pawn to h5. And then some mating that is coming with bishop d4 check.
And he's
lost. Queen b8. Checkmate.
Wow, Marco, he got away with a little something in the last game to come away with a draw. This time around, he might not be so lucky. It is a fully winning position here for White, and Artin Ashraf is not looking to blunder this one away.
Checkmate.
There it is. Massive win by Artin over the current tournament leader and leapfrogging in to first place himself. Now 7.5 points to his name to do it over Marco Materia as well. What a showing by him. That completely shakes up the standings. You can see over there, right-hand side of your screens, everybody, a name that was kind of becoming cemented at the top spot, and Marco Materia now drops to third place alongside the likes of a Noterbek Yakuboyev, who has been making a late surge as well, by the way. But it's Andrekin and Ashraf who now share first place, a tie at 7.5 points through 9 rounds.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. Crazy action. Okay, Marco was always on the back foot, but just when it looked like he might survive, then things got out of control. But still, Alexander Grishchuk is having a crazy kind of affair here against Edgar Mamedov. Rookie 6 played. White is up a piece, but Black has 3 pawns, and this h3 pawn seems to be very powerful. Plus, there are all these mating ideas against White's king. Will Sasha survive? That's the question.
That is a question yet to be answered. So, well, a draw by repetition, that will be the result. Would you call that survival in that circumstance?
Well, I don't know. Both players had so little time, and the fact that Black was willing to make the draw, it probably signals that he was the tendency of the game was that he was on the defensive and he was happy to survive.
Right. Yeah, that's true. We didn't have the benefit of seeing how that game played from the beginning, but sometimes, the result or the way that a game ends can kind of tell you, it gives you echoes of the game that preceded it. And if you were the player who is perhaps on the defensive, on the losing side, that first opportunity you get to draw, you say, I'm going to take it, I'm going to run with it, when even maybe there was slightly more winning chances for you in the end. But 0.5 point apiece goes to each of those players. I believe they both slotted up to 6 points to their names, leaves them 1.5 points out of first. So very likely not contending for the top spot, but still in the running for a podium finish and picking up some points in the overall standings. The spotlight, the focus is really going to now come to the top, let's say 7 players, because those are the players who are sitting with 7 points or more to their name. Again, it's the top 2 tied at 7.5 points apiece in Dmitry Andrekin and Artin Ashraf. Now we got Marco Materia, who drops down into a share of third place with 5 other players. Noterbek Yakuboyev, we've got Guha, we got Pranav, and we've got Abtin, a player and a name that we've not talked about, Abtin Atakan, who's jumping up to 7 points to his name as well. So striking distance there for all of them. 2 games to go. So technically the players with 6.5 as well could make some moves, however unlikely that might be.
Yeah, and also what is very important that Pranav is back to 7 points. Yeah, so he's actually having a tremendous chance to overtake Bortnik in the overall leaderboard, because he is now up there with 7 points, just 0.5 point behind the leaders with a great finish. He might be collecting quite enough points. There was, I think, a 4 points gap between Bortnik and Pranav. This will make Bortnik all the more nervous.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. And Bortnik is not a name that we see in this top 10. And while obviously we put a lot of focus on who's going to win today's event, perhaps more importantly is what the overall standings look like when it comes to the Freestyle Friday circuit. And that's where the separation between a player like Pranav and Bortnik is very important. We'll flip on over to those standings because it is Bortnik who currently holds the top spot. It's 4 points exactly, as you had said there, that separates him and Pranav. Pranav looking to make up that differential and more here today. And then it's the next name on the list, right? Noterbek Yakuboyev. And let's not forget what a tumultuous start he had to the day, but he as well is in that, he's now in that 0.5 point separation. He could very well be coming away tournament winner today, put 10 points on the board, and he's right in that mix.
Yes, it's basically anybody's tournament at the moment who have 7 points or 7.5. They are very much fighting for the title today. And Pranav and Yakuboev are one of those players. The pairings will be super important. But you know what I have in my mind, and it comes back to my mind. Who is Artin Ashraf? I would so much picture. I want to vision. I want to see his face. Unfortunately, we are not having him on camera.
We'll be robbed of his visage on screen, but we won't be robbed of his gameplay as he's going up against Dmitry Andreikin, who, again, after having maybe one of the only games we've watched of his so far was one that he probably would want back, right? Didn't go the way he would have hoped. But even still, he finds himself tournament leader, 7.5 points to his name. Let's see how he navigates this situation here.
Yes, actually, when you lose a game like it happened to Andreikin versus Marco, then you kind of feel like you own it to yourself to come back. Because if you don't come back, it will haunt you forever. How could I? But if you bounce back and you play a good tournament, that's the only medicine you have that will calm your nerves and you will forgive yourself.
Well, off we go into round number 10, the penultimate round. 2 to go before we decide today's Freestyle Friday winner. Who gets 10 points in the overall standings? First castle is on the board here, and it comes at the hands of Dmitry Andreikin.
Yeah, looks kind of nice, but yeah, normally you prefer to put the rook f1 to d1, but then you would be faced with knight g4 hitting the f2 pawn, yeah? So this is the reason why in freestyle chess you can never rely on just any hand move, yeah? Because in every other position, thematically you play rook fd1, but here you had to play rook bd1.
Well, the castle is matched a move or two later.
Yeah, d5, it was the big question. Yeah.
There's just a lot of congestion here, center of the board.
I'm trying to evaluate the position, yeah, because I'm trying to distract myself from engine's evaluation, and I see benefits for both sides. Yeah, black has this outpost on e4, potentially some kingside attack. White, on the other hand, has the space advantage. He has already pushed d5. He only has this great bishop on a1, which also combined with a timely knight b5. For example, if it's white to move, white is able to play knight b5. That could be very unpleasant for black. That's why black waste a tempo to put the rook from b8 to d8 in order to create that square for the bishop on b8 on the diagonal. And then white uses the time to cover things on the king side with h3 because black is probably counting on some queen h5 counterplay.
Well, h3, that to me in this circumstance feels quite a bit like a waiting move. It does.
Yeah, but it's a super important waiting move because yes, and also that if black plays queen h5, then suddenly we have this knight b5 hitting the bishop b8, d takes e6, and suddenly because of the pin on the d8 rook, black is unable to capture back on e6 because then we are winning material with queen d8. So actually it's a great defensive prophylactic move. Black opted for queen g6 and white did not play knight b5. I cannot believe that he did not play knight b5. The same idea could have worked to perfection. Instead, he played knight d2 and then bishop e5. Oh my god, computer was saying that knight g5 was some mating attack all of a sudden. With knight takes h3, there is no way to defend. Yeah, king h1.
Right.
Then probably you also just play something and then you hit on h3. Can you believe that after queen g6, knight b5 would have just won the game? Instead of knight b5, he plays knight d2 and black would have won the game. It's crazy.
It'll never cease to amaze me how the game of chess can just completely flip on its head from one move to the next. And even still, both players, right, not finding it.
Yes, but can you imagine if you are the trainer or the relative, a wife or father or mother of some of these players, and you are following with an engine and you are hoping that, wow, it looks good, everything is not, and then you are lost all of a sudden. Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Well, Peter, basically, you're asking me to put myself in your shoes watching a Vincent Keimer game, and I would never want to put myself in your shoes watching a Vincent Keimer game. I would never want to feel the stress and the pressure of either being a coach or the loved one
Yes.
of somebody playing at this high level in a game that can balance so precariously at times.
Yes. Now, actually, the good news for Andrekin is that situation stabilized. He has a slight advantage, and no real surprise is possible here. He wants to double. Yeah, if he would be able to double now, he might go Queen G4, setting up a nice little endgame.
There it is.
Yes,
G4
on the
on the
board.
board.
Rook F5, but this is very unpleasant. This is super. Yeah, just take Rook D1.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like the white rook is so much more powerful in this position.
And the pawn structure, yeah, black has two weaknesses, the d7 and the e4 pawns, and white only has f2, which is beautifully protected by the king on g1, and white can combine playing on different flanks. Yeah, that's kind of also the idea. Queen g3, setting up rook d6 on the board. Rook e5, now rook d7 wins the pawn, for example. Played.
All right, the pawn is picked up. Now it's just a queen apiece.
Yes.
Alongside those pawns, but still the weakness that you talked about in that e-pawn.
Exactly. Because while one could argue that sometimes queen endgames are drawish, but this one feels completely lost because of the structure. And also black's king has nowhere to hide.